Welcome, everyone. We are getting started. We're just going to give everybody a chance to come into the room. Glad to see everybody here. Welcome. We'll give everybody a few minutes to come in. You are at the NCAC webinar on virtual meetings, and we're going to be exploring some great topics this evening. So we'll talk about a handful of different cool things, including some best practices for your meetings. We'll try to answer some of the questions that you might have about using virtual meetings with your units. And we're going to hear from a couple of units and some of the things that they are doing to succeed. So this part's great. And I think you guys will enjoy it. We've got a lot of useful information to try to help pull things together for you. So thank you guys for coming. And I'm glad to see you all here. I'm just going to go ahead and bring up our screen here for one moment. Let me just share, and we'll bring this live. So what we're going to be talking about is virtual meetings today, and we are taking a look at best practices. So I'm glad to see so many of you here. Joining us for this, we have some great panelists today. So our agenda is you're going to learn about some guidelines for safely holding meetings, things you need to know when it comes to holding your meetings. We're going to talk a little bit about some suggested technology, as well as youth protection and other elements that you need so that the meetings are safe and follow BSA policy. So we'll go through that, pretty straightforward stuff. And I appreciate you guys coming here today. Brian and Arden, I'm also setting you as oops, Arden, I need to bring you back. Hold on. Brian, I need to bring you back. 1 second. Let me promote you, Brian. Click the wrong button. It's one of those days. 1 second, Brian. Promote to panelist. And I'm going to make you a co-host, Brian. So go ahead and accept that invitation, if you would, Brian, for being a panelist. That's great. And we will make slides available to you guys a little bit later. There's a vetting process that those have to go through really quick. So once that is done, we will share those with you. So you guys will be able to take advantage of that. So hopefully that helps. And Brian, I'm going to promote you as well to a co-host, just in case we have internet connectivity issues, because for some reason, my part of Virginia has been very volatile tonight with all sorts of power fluctuations, which makes things a little hard. You'll notice currently my web camera is black. So I normally prefer to let you see me. So we'll talk about how to safely hold meetings online, some suggested technology, a little bit about youth protection, some strategies for participation, and some guidelines related to advancement and some other cool things that you can use to bring people into your meetings and to have them be involved and having fun. So hopefully this will make a lot of sense, and we'll take a look at all of that. We've got some great panelists. So Arden is here this evening. She is our Vice President of Program and Impact. So she'll be here as well to address some of the things related potentially to advancement or other core concepts. Alan and David are also working with our Advancement and Recognition Committee and our Merit Badge Dean, so they might be in the chat pod to respond to some of the questions that you have. We also have some great folks from Troop 1533G and Troop 98B. So Brian, forgive me, I didn't know if you were a Scoutmaster or Assistant Scoutmaster. I guessed. You'll have to tell me if it's either of those jobs. Perfect, good, I guessed correctly. So welcome everyone, glad that you guys are all here. So let's tackle a few things right away. And one of the things that's most important is having some safety in mind as we do online meetings. So a lot of parents and a lot of others are concerned when it comes to online meetings. And so I wanted you to know that we've released a pretty thorough article over at We Own Adventure, which is our council's blog. And this is where you can ask and see a lot of information about what's going to work best. Now, if you guys have questions, there is a Q&A button at the bottom down there that you can click to bring up Q&A. And that's most helpful. Some of you are putting information in the chat, but the Q&A button's a little bit more useful so we see it. So you'll find this article, and it's called Guidance on Virtual Meetings with Youth, and it has a lot of recommendations that we're covering tonight and a few others. Additionally, You are allowed to use this virtual technology, and there is some guidance if you need to hold things like merit badge sessions with your troop, boards of review, or meeting with other counselors or the STEM program. And you can use this guidance to help you as you put your program together. You do need to get approval if your troop wants to offer merit badge instruction to scouts in another unit, but no approval or changes are needed if you decide to offer your own merit badges to your own scouts. So there's no need there for doing anything special like that. Arden, is there anything you'd like to add a little bit from the program side for units that they should know? You're unmuted.
Oh, thanks. Well, we're just excited that, that the council has figured out a mechanism to provide these online activities like merit badge courses. And more broadly, we're excited that your units are having meetings virtually. It's really important to keep our scouts excited about scouting and advancement and our really neat programs that we have. We do want our scouts to have a quality experience in our merit badge classes. And that's why Rich and Aaron have spent so many hours to review all the platforms and found methods to keep our youth safe online. And our advancement team, I'm sure you'll hear from Alan Dieter and Dave Assel in particular. They have reviewed carefully the Guide to Advancement and all the new guidelines that keep coming from national, and they've interpreted them for our council. And I think that's about all I have.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And a lot of those guidelines that you're mentioning are out there, so that's great. And we'll point out some of those. We've put most of them up on We Own Adventure, which is our council blog. Now, one of the things that's happening here is a couple of you are asking, do I need to have permission or request authorization? So your unit does not need permission to meet online. It has been deemed acceptable, and our council has posted the guidelines here. If you go to weownadventure.com, and you'll see the safety guidelines and the recommendations we have so that things run correctly. You don't have to follow these, but we strongly encourage you to look at some of the safety guidelines we're going to talk tonight. Additionally, we want to encourage you, if you've not done so as a unit, to make CyberChip part of your unit. This is the same idea of online safety, and it's mostly an activity that your scouts will do at home with their parents, but there is a couple of interactions of teaching other scouts and having a conversation with a unit leader, so it's a good idea. Also, if you want to get inspired, there are some great stories up on We Own Adventure already about units that are meeting virtually. And if any of you have been doing cool virtual activities as a unit, we'd love to get stories from you. So you can click on the Submit Your News button at the top. So we've heard from a bear den that's already been having Weeblos meetings. And I thought this one was super cool. One of our troops just held a joint meeting with a scout troop over in Afghanistan. And they exchanged culture and talked about scouting in their two countries and how that was running. So that's definitely something pretty cool that you can check out. All right. So on the technology side, I don't want to go too deep, but there's a few things to know. First up, make sure you disable any one-to-one messaging. Just like any other real-world meeting, we don't want one-to-one messaging happening between adults and youth, or even youth to youth if possible, because it could lead to bullying or other concerns. Also, if you're picking a technology for your unit, try to focus on something that doesn't have a per family charge. Pick a platform that's reasonable. Now, if you are a district or a council or a committee or a chapter for OA, you could take advantage of the council's Zoom meetings. But as a unit, you could set up your own account for about $14 or use some of the free services that are there. So that will work. Also, make sure you study the security features. There's been a lot of problems of people talking about Zoom bombing, which isn't just related to Zoom, where people have been dropping in on meetings. But then when we talk to people, we find out like, well, yeah, we just posted the link to our Facebook page, and our Facebook page is public, and there's no password on the meeting, and there's no security code. That's a bad idea. That's asking people to drop by and be obnoxious. So there's a lot of information, and we've posted some of it, but there's great simple security. Make sure your families know not to share meeting links, and that Scouts don't share them with other people. Also, most of these platforms support a registration page so that you can ask families to register, and they enter a real name so that you know who's there. And if you need to, you can review that list before you let people in. We use a feature like registration, like you did for this event, where you registered yourself and we were able to hear who wanted to come and see a log of email and names. You also might have noticed that you were all in a waiting room before the webinar started. This is important because it means that you don't start the meeting until you have 2 deep adult leadership. And it's also great that if someone is having a problem, or maybe they don't realize their microphone is turned on and they're in the middle of yelling at the dog and the doorbell's going off and somebody just delivered food and there's all sorts of screaming and audio and it's disruptive, you can eject somebody to the waiting room until they're back under control. But do not add people to your meetings if you do not know who they are. If you see somebody trying to come into one of your online meetings and they are not registered in your unit, do not let them in. Make sure that you know everybody you let into your online meeting, and use the waiting room feature so you have to authorize people. So even if they have the link and the password, they still can't get in until you click the button. Once we turn this registration option on and this waiting room feature on, we have eliminated 99.5% of the Zoom bombing that has happened to our council events. Zoom bombing is where people think it's funny to drop in on other people's meetings and try to disrupt them, sometimes with terribly un-Scout-like behavior or content. So make sure you use those basic security features. Please, at this time, do not record your meetings. Now, we are recording tonight's meeting for 2 reasons. It's not a meeting, it's a webinar, and the panelists have given us permission because of the educational value of this to distribute. But normal online meetings, National has asked that you do not record your standard meetings because of some of the varying laws, and that we don't want to record meetings where advancement and other activities like that are happening, that's not part of that process. Additionally, here's some useful things about moderating a meeting, making sure that you have somebody who can help control mics. I know Winter's going to talk a little bit about what it's like when there's 15 people all trying to talk at once, and I know she's figured out how to use the mute all button when she runs a meeting. So that's a great control when you are the moderator to keep things running smoothly. And you absolutely should not let people into your meeting who are not a part of your organization, okay? Remove them. So when you host a meeting, there's great controls here, like the ability to prevent people from turning on their video if you don't want people sharing video right away. The ability to control whether or not people can unmute themselves. All these simple options. Zoom has some great tutorials, as do all the other platforms. Look them over. That's the bottom line. From a youth protection point of view, you must have 2 deep adult leadership. That's registered adult leadership. If your meeting is going to host a girls unit, you have the same requirements of having female adult leadership present as you do for an in-person meeting. If you're going to use breakout groups and start splitting people into rooms for smaller meetings by patrol, make sure you have 2 deep adult leadership there so you have enough adults. A lot of these platforms let you do breakout meetings so patrols could meet and keep talking and work in smaller groups. Make sure all communication is public. Don't allow for private messaging, and keep some records. You can't record your meeting, but keep a log and keep a list of who registered for your meeting and who attended. This will also help you later on when you have to track participation and you're doing boards of review or things like that. All right, we're about to hear from the stars of the program. We've got Winter and Henry are going to share some of their successes of running meetings. And Brian and Bob are also going to share some of their experiences as unit leaders. So we want to encourage in these meetings active participation, that there's a way for people to learn and have fun, so that people are doing things and being involved. So some of the things can include virtual tours or events, working on merit badges or requirements, having a campfire in everyone's backyard, playing games, doing joint meetings with other groups that you want to connect with, or having breakout rooms. So we're going to start with Winter. Winter, feel free to unmute your mic, and I just put your slides into the presentation here, so I'll try to follow along with you. But if I get lost, just tell me when to go to the next slide, okay?
Right, okay.
Go for it.
For preparing a virtual meeting, it's really important that you plan everything beforehand, especially if you're doing a merit badge. Have a plan for how everything is going to be organized, and don't have one scout doing all the work, because then it's just really boring and the scouts don't really want to pay attention. So delegate things to other scouts so that they can also have leadership opportunities, and so everyone can be engaging in it. And when you start a meeting, it's really important that the scouts are aware of what's going to be happening, because if they walk in prepared, then it's just going to be a much easier meeting. And a consistent agenda is important too, because that's also great for scouts knowing what's going to be happening. So we recently did public health merit badge, which I would suggest other troops do, because this is like the perfect time to do it. Like Mr. Harrington said earlier, the only thing is that there's a part where you have to go to like a school cafeteria or a restaurant, which we can't really do right now because we're quarantined. So you can do that virtually online, and that's just an effective way to get that merit badge done. Keeping the meetings fun but under control. So at the beginning of the meeting, before like the flag ceremony, when the scouts are just coming in, they can talk then and they can have fun. And at the end also, they can be talking. And if the meeting goes smoothly and there's extra time, then they can also talk then and plan future meetings. And it doesn't have to be super serious. Like the Zoom calls are really not that scary. Everyone's telling jokes and having fun the entire time. So just making sure that they're under control and not all the scouts talking at the same time is just what you have to be careful with. And discussions, like I said, we did public health merit badge. That's the last merit badge that we did. It's actually really great. It's a lot of fun. We had to talk about like viruses and bacteria, which you think might be kind of scary because of what we're going through. But the scouts did their research and everyone was able to contribute and add on to each other. And if mistakes are made, it's okay because someone can just correct them and then we're back on schedule. Interactive add-ons. So Troop 1533, they really love Kahoot for whatever reason. It's like their favorite game. I think it's just the competition of it. But they really like that game. And so I would really consider like Jackbox and other safe websites. You just have to be careful with them. Like if you're adding games into your meetings, just make sure that you know that they're safe and won't give you like computer viruses and such. That's really important. And the Zoom chat is great for meetings, but it can be distracting really quickly. So just be careful with that. And again, discussions are great because everyone can say what they want and add on to each other.
Before we go to the next slide there, Winter, I found a cool thing that I'll show you before your next meeting. You can, as the host, turn chat on or off when you need to. So you could decide chat is on and chat is off. So it's under the magical more button under your panelist control there. So it's super helpful, and that might be a great way that you can have it when you want it and turn it off when you need people paying attention.
Okay, thank you. We recently had a virtual campout. On the next slide, I have how we planned it. We planned it into segments, but it was a lot of individual work because when you're doing a virtual campout, everyone's kind of their own quartermaster and their own grub master. You're kind of planning your own meeting, and there's times where you're all together and there's times where you're alone, like when you're setting up your tent or cooking. You have to take into account that there's different environments for different scouts. Some scouts have huge backyards, some scouts have no backyards. Some scouts have full equipment and some scouts have none. So you really have to, a lot about the virtual stuff is just you really have to plan a lot and you have to make sure that everyone has what they need. Something good about virtual campouts is that the planning is easier because you're just planning for yourself. You're not planning for everyone else. And there's fewer resource constraints. So like if you run out of water, you can just go back inside and get some more. If you didn't get enough food, you can just go back in your house and get some. But what's more difficult about them is it's harder to have standard camp out activities. Like we had a campfire, which was great because we were all on a Zoom call together telling scary stories. It was really fun. But it's harder to have specific activities and there's a loss of specific attraction. Like a lot of scout troops, they go and they travel around for like rock climbing or whitewater rafting. They go to certain places. It's kind of hard to do that in your backyard. So you don't get to travel a lot and it's kind of a different experience, but it's still really great. That was our campout plan. So regular versus virtual campouts, I'd say that virtual meetings are more productive because they're more efficient and there's fewer distractions and there's more participation because I feel like they research more when they have more time at home to do that. Regular meetings are more fun though because you're all together and you can like go play outside, you can do physical activities together, and also you can fool around with the boys troop or the girls troop or just different patrols. The campout they're very effective when they're virtual and regular, but I feel like the regular is a better experience because you're together and it's just there's more that you can do. Lessons that I learned during these are that the planning is the key to success in everything virtually because it's just everything goes better when everything's planned in usual campouts, but especially in virtual, you need to have a plan. Delegation, not one scout should be doing everything. It's still the same. Everyone should be having different parts and different opportunities. Meetings are not just work. You can have fun during them. You can have games. Just make sure that they're safe. And unfortunately, a lot of trips have been canceled because of this quarantine. And that hopefully scouts will get to do the same activities next year or soon. But take advantage of the time that you have. Talk with your troop, see what they want to do, see what new merit badges they want to do, like public health and stuff, and just stay safe, everyone.
Excellent. Well, very well done. And Winter, we'll come back to you. I'm sure there's going to be some great questions. I'd now like to go to Henry and have Henry share some of his experiences. Your unit's been meeting online for quite some time as well. And then Scoutmasters, I know there's a lot of behind the scenes and logistical things and support that you've provided. We'll come to you guys next. But Henry, let's go ahead and unmute you there. And why don't you tell us some of the things you've been doing as a unit?
Yeah, so we had, I think we've been doing it for 2 weeks now, but what we've been doing is we've been splitting up into breakout rooms, and we had 2 merit badges and 1 rank room. So one breakout room was public health, and the other was citizenship in the nation, and then the third one was rank. So we have found that the scouts tend to lose interest after about an hour or so, and it's really good to keep them interested. We also think that it would be that we like when they participate. So what we've done is we've had them do work beforehand, and what happens is in the rank room, they are assigned to go over certain requirements, and then when they come back to the next meeting, they review them and say what they've learned. So yeah.
Excellent. And Henry, one of the things as you're doing this, what sort of things have been most popular with your scouts? You said that they start to get bored if the meetings run too long. Have you been able to put any fun activities in yet? Or is there anything that's worked better than other things, or things that you have been changing that are going in the right direction?
Oh yeah, so in the beginning we started in the beginning we didn't do that many we didn't have a very long opening ceremony. But at the end, we decided to put more time into the chat at the beginning and give them more time to join. And then so that was better. And and gave people more time to get organized and all that.
Cool. Very cool. And that's very helpful. Henry Winter, we'll come back to you in a moment. And there's a few follow-up questions that people are gonna, that we'll ask here in a moment. But Brian, if we can start with you, you've been helping support some of this. Brian, what are some of the things that you're seeing at the unit level that have worked well, and some things that were early challenges that maybe you've overcome?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, I think we've been meeting online for about a month now, and using Zoom. I think for us, just a couple of things that we identified. One is we did pony up, and we did purchase the basic plan, the basic Zoom plan. I think that runs about $14 a month. It does come with advanced features, and most importantly, the breakout rooms that Henry mentioned. Gives you a little bit more control and advanced features. It also offers Scouts the ability to join either online or by phone. We wanted to make sure that if Scouts weren't able, if they didn't have a computer, they also had the opportunity to maybe dial in and join the meeting that way. So accessibility for us here in DC was an issue. We wanted to make sure that we provided those options. For us, we are also a Scout book unit. We generally post all of our meeting details in our Scout book calendar, which we continue to do. But what I have, in addition, we've temporarily removed our calendar from our public website because it does have all of the meeting details. We are using a unique meeting link and password for each meeting. But if a Scout or a parent logs into Scout book, they can view all that information. So we did take down the public calendar for that. As Henry mentioned, as SPL Henry mentioned, we've been using breakout rooms for both specific activities, merit badge, and rank advancement. One thing we have found is we need more adults to support our meetings, because we need 2 adults in each room at all times, and it's our preference that we have at least one of those adults as a BSA registered volunteer. So generally, when we're all in one room in our large meeting hall, we can have 4 or 5 adults, and we can have 6 groups because we're all in one room. But now that we're online, for us to do, if we do 3 virtual rooms, we need 6 adults. And if we do 4 rooms, we need 8 adults. You don't have the ability to see, you can't jump from room to room in Zoom, so we need to make sure that we're always having 2 adults in each room. So we did find that does, sometimes we have to connect with the SPL and the PLC beforehand, see how many rooms that we have, and so they've understood. I think we do gather. We use the meeting room and the mute on entry, so I'm pretty quick on the mute trigger. We try to do we do an opening ceremony. We gather. We found that an hour seems to work pretty well. We extended, as SPL Henry mentioned, we extended this week's meeting, but we found folks really did kind of disconnect. I think the other thing is to keep in mind, a lot of our Scouts are also doing school online all day as well. So just like a lot of us are working online for those who are working from home, there is a little bit of online meeting fatigue, and we meet on Monday nights. And so that is something to be aware of and to keep in mind. So I think we'll be adjusting back. And to, the other thing is I sent a note to all of our parents and Scouts letting them know we were working through this. This is, I know everybody is looking for something to compare this to. This is my first global pandemic that I'm working through. And I hope it's everyone else's, and we're doing our best. And so, I think for that very first meeting, we did meet with our PLC first to run through what the logistics might be. And then for the very first meeting, both myself and Henry spent a little bit more at the front of that very first online meeting to explain what expectations are. And so, but since then we've found it works pretty well, and we just need to keep encouraging guys to use their real names. And we're beginning to try to be creative on some of the things using the polls. We did have a who tells the best joke, which of the Scoutmasters tell the best joke. We are going to have some additional fun polls And we're looking at some other things that we can do, like virtual. I think next, when our next meeting after the Easter break, we're going to try to do like a virtual online scavenger hunt for like give everybody like a minute and find your pocket knife or find your scout handbook. Things that you can engage where the scouts can do something in real life in their homes, but then display it on screen. So like, how quickly can you find your handbook? Things like that. So. Richard, I believe you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
Thank you for telling me that. It sounded great to me. So, it's been a long day, everyone. Thank you for your patience. So we're going to go to Bob Phillips next. And also David Assel, our Consul's Merit Badge Dean, has joined us. And so I do see that there are some questions popping up about advancement in the Q&A pod. So that'll be helpful. We'll review some of those in a moment. But Bob, I'd like to hear from you as well. You've been also meeting for about a month. And what were some of the things that you had to work through? And any lessons learned that you can share with others just to help them with their process?
Guys, Brian's covered so much so well. I have the benefit of working with an excellent senior patrol leader in winter. I think the first meeting was the most instructive, as she said, and really requiring that you have an agenda, that you have a plan, and that you walk through it very thoroughly, because the subsequent meetings have gone so well. It is good to have it broken up. So working through citizenship in the nation or working through public health merit badges, those can be fairly dry. So making sure that there is a game involved has been really important. The Cahoots, the girls have really enjoyed them. And it also sets up some competition going over the principles from the merit badge. We had one of our senior scouts actually develop the first Kahoot. It was 50 questions. We didn't get through all of it. So the second Kahoot was much shorter, and it was fun to see the girls competing for who could answer the most correct questions. But finding a game, I think, is really critical. As a merit badge counselor being involved, it's forced a lot more preparation. So having virtual visits to a commercial kitchen or to a water treatment plant, it can be a little bit of a struggle to find those resources online, but it's nice to have a single resource that you can embed in whatever tool you're using for the merit badge for them to walk through and see, and then come back and be able to answer questions. For the virtual camp out, again, all of the girls devising, it was quite interesting. The campfire was particularly fun with the jokes. It meant the adults, having enough adults on has not been an issue, but letting Winter run the meeting and being in the background as you would at any other meeting, typically managing the noise level, managing the chat box, turning off the chat box when it gets going too hard, muting everyone except your senior patrol leader occasionally just to get the roar down to a controllable volume. But really stepping back as an adult and letting the girls run the troop meeting and just offering guidance now and then instead of, as some adults will step in and try and take over the agenda. It can be a little bit difficult, but it's good. And I think a lot of this preparation, a lot of the meeting regulation will be good training for us going back into our regular meetings where you would hope the extra preparation will be helpful there too.
Excellent.
The one other thing, we haven't used the breakout rooms. That's very interesting, but we have had a number of our Star Scouts do their EDGE method training with junior scouts, and setting up those separate meetings, I will say, has an extra level of preparation too, because if you're going to do knots and lashings, you have to make sure people on both sides have their poles, have their ropes, have their handbooks. So making sure that you have that preparation done ahead of time is especially important.
Excellent. Well, we're going to go to David in just a moment. I'm sure he has a few things to share. There's a couple of small clarifications, and some of these questions have already popped up. Not all merit badges allow for virtual tours. Some of them have specifically called out that virtual tours are acceptable, particularly when there's extreme limitations. For example, I'm counseling an animation merit badge session, and unless you happen to have a troop in California, just stopping by your local animation studio is a little hard to do. So they absolutely allow for virtual tours. Some other things may mean getting 95% done and then finishing later. There was two questions on the campout before we go to David. One I'll answer, and then one I'd like Winter to answer. And the first one is, does this count as camping nights? And the current decision is no, these do not meet the needs for camping nights. However, your activities and a lot of your scouts need to have non-meeting activities. So there are room for activities. Plus, there's also just the fellowship and the fun of doing these sorts of things. Winter, one of the questions that was asked about the virtual campout, did you have specific times and check-ins? I know we briefly showed your schedule, but
Yes.
how did you make that work?
Can you go back to the slideshow for a second so I can explain it?
Sure.
Thank
Yep,
you.
I'll bring it up in 1 second. Talk about it at a high level, and I'll bring it live here in just a second for you.
Okay, so yeah, there were certain times where we would be on the Zoom call and where the scouts would be alone. Like at the beginning of it, from 3 to 4 p.m., I think we decided was when the scouts were going to be, 3 to 4 p.m., the scouts were going to be setting up their own campsites. So that was not going to be on the Zoom call. But at 5 p.m., we all went on the Zoom call for socializing time. We were just playing games and talking and just having fun. And then that ended at 6, and from 6 to 7 p.m., scouts were cooking and doing KP. And also, I wanted to mention that on these individual times, obviously, there's a lot of free time. Like, it doesn't take an hour to set up a tent generally. So, scouts could work on merit badges that they're doing individually, or they could be whittling, or they could be starting their fire at 7 p.m. Like, there's a lot of free time, so there's a lot of room for doing other things. But we did have specific times where you would be on Zoom call, which were 5 p.m., 7:30 to 9 p.m., which was our campfire activity. And that was day 1. And then day 2 was optional to show up because a lot of people, because of quarantine, have been waking up later because of all the free time and, staying up late and all that. So you didn't have to show up for the 10 a.m. Zoom call to 11:30. But, if you wanted to work on requirements, and we did set up 2 separate meetings for working on certain requirements for Edge, for, Star Scouts. We set up different meetings. But a lot of things were optional to show up to, and a lot of things that's how we set it up.
Excellent. Excellent. So one other thing to keep in mind, showing content via video, demonstrating, showing photographic evidence, a lot of these things are deemed acceptable. Arden, there's been a lot of questions on advancement. I know you and David are both here. We don't want to go too deep on these. There's a lot of things that you've already released on the council's website, but Arden or David, would either of you like to make a few general statements, or if you see some of the Q&A that's been popping up, would you like to address any of that?
I'm deferring to David. I did answer the NOVA one.
Sure. I'll unmute you, David. Is that okay?
Okay, there I've been unmuted. I don't, did the thing we put up about virtual visits and stuff, has that been put up online yet? I don't know that I've seen it yet. No, can't hear.
It should be.
Arden.
I'll
should be.
copy it here. I have it where I can do that.
Yeah, the issue there for the virtual camping anyway is a lot of stuff has to be done with the patrol, where various tasks are passed out to the patrol, and it's really difficult to do it virtually. So what we're saying is it's fun to do it. You'll probably get a good experience out of it, but we can't apply it toward rank or camping merit badge.
Okay. You're breaking up a little bit there, David. We'll come
And
back
also
to you.
on the, we recommend people look at what we put out, because we essentially tried to bring out what the philosophy behind advancement is all about. And we know that Scout Masters and Merit Badge counselors are going to be the ones that do the approval of this stuff, but we want to take into the consideration of what is the actual intent of what the requirements are, and let's not just work around it to complete it and shortchange the Scout on the experience that they ought to be getting out of that requirement.
Okay. Thank you, David. We'll revisit some of that. There are a couple of questions that have popped up, and I'm going to start to work our way through those right now. And where needed, we'll try to tackle some of these with some of our guest experts here. So easy enough. One thing that I wanted to share was a little bit about group instruction. And this is some of the things that David was alluding to. There's been some release of this on our website when we make the suggestion. So there is official stuff in the Guide to Advancement about how to provide group instruction for merit badges. There are some suggestions in there about how to handle working with larger groups and ensure the active participation. So it means slow things down a little bit and allow for the discussion. Winter shared with you earlier, as did Henry, how they're using breakout rooms and having conversations or doing ongoing discussions, and Scouts are all actively participating. So it's important that you look at this. The goal here is to not do a merit badge factory. You don't want to be popping through a badge a meeting here. Slow it down. I don't want to say we have oodles of time, but you don't have to rush, and make it a good, meaningful experience and let the people really dig into it a little bit. So you could definitely find some stuff about there. You do not need permission to run merit badges as a unit if it's for your Scouts. So keep in mind, you are free to run that as long as you have approved merit badge counselors to do that. You can do that, or there are activities that districts and others are putting on. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit there. For virtual campout, do you have Zoom going in the background? I think we've answered that one pretty straightforward. So having it on for certain points of time makes sense. I know my own Scout had to recharge her phone once, and I gave her a battery pack because she ran it down. So I'm sure there was more than one occasion when someone's battery went dead. So definitely something to make sure you allow for recharge time. Can NCAC do volume licensing? So there's not a volume license program that we can easily partake in. If you are a district or a council activity, they do have some rooms that are used for district level activities. However, you can use the free accounts, or the account is about $15 a month, and that will accommodate your entire unit, including the use of breakout and other things. There are other free solutions as well. Look at the article we mentioned earlier on the We Own Adventure site, because it gives you some things to look at. Some places have restrictions on age of members, that they must be 18 years old to use the service, or 13 years old to use the service. So it's important that you look at the terms of service and what's allowed. Okay, so are troops paying for Kahoot or finding a way to do it for more than 20 people for free or low cost? I know that there are some alternatives to Kahoot. Winter, you mentioned you guys were using Kahoot. Bob, did somebody at the troop level, did you guys just make that an expense and ask the troop committee to cover it, or what did you guys do?
The Kahoot it doesn't cost any money. We just set up different Kahoots and we design them, and we have a code for the girls to join on, but it doesn't cost us anything.
It does if you get a bigger group, Winter, but for certain size groups, it's free, and they have also made it free to a lot of teachers right now. So if anybody in your unit is an educator, they've unlocked it for free. So you might be taking advantage of one of their free plans, which is great. And you can use those with the breakout groups rather than everyone else participating. Bob, did you have any other on the back end, or do the girls set that all up on their own?
The girls set up one because they had access to it through school, and I set up a free account. And I actually searched and found a Kahoot already developed for Public Health Merit Badge, and then I just revamped it and added in some of our own content for coronavirus. So it was free. It was easy.
Excellent. Excellent. Good. So I think we've tackled most of the questions here. I see a few more, so we're going to weave through these. If you do have questions, this is the portion of the meeting that we've set aside for this. We have about 5 more minutes. And then for those of you who are watching the replay or reading this later, we will have an opportunity. We're going to do a second meeting next week where we'll be inviting some more guests to come on and share their experiences. So hopefully that's helpful. People were wondering the size of your units as just a general benchmark. So Henry, if you're still with us, how many Scouts are you trying to manage at a meeting?
In our troop, there are about 30 to 35 Scouts in our troop. So we don't have 80 to 100 Scouts.
Okay, so a little bit easier. Winter, like most of the girls' units, your unit is newer. how many Scouts are you having at most of your meetings?
Around 16 girls.
Okay. So there is some benefit of not trying to put 100 people in a room at once. So patrol level meetings, our boys troop has been doing some age level meetings. So they brought all the newer Scouts together and the older Scouts who needed some teaching experience and the instructors to do a meeting, doing some separate breakouts for merit badges. So trying to pull 100 people together in an online meeting isn't necessarily a great experience. So it might be better to do a few smaller breakouts or shorter meetings with fewer people. So I hope that helps answer your question, Glennis. But I understand the challenge that you are facing there. Erica asked a question about merit badges during this time. A lot of our Scouts are working on personal fitness, and I'd like an opinion on whether a dentist or doctor visit any time since the youth became a Scout counts. So if they had the dentist or doctor visit while they've been enrolled in the Scouts BSA program, does that work so they don't need to go to a hospital or a doctor's office now? David, is there any chance you might be prepared to answer that question, or do you need some more time to check on that one? Let me unmute you 1 second. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at the now, and you can visit as long as the Scout was registered in Scouts BSA at that point in time. But you still need to get the notice from the dentist that the dental care is currently ongoing. And then as far as the physical, it'd have to be using the Scout medical exam, and he'd have to go through those 1 through 5 questions. But the actual visit would count so long as he was registered within the BSA, Scouts BSA.
Okay, so some flexibility there. I know that, for example, some merit badges are allowing, as long as the Scout was registered as a Scout, because remember, a Scout can be working on a merit badge for a very long time. Speaking of merit badges, it's still important that the Scout checks in with the unit leader and informs them as they're getting ready to start a badge. I do see Stacy was asking a question about virtual camping doesn't count, but for Cub Scouts, since activities are meant to be done by boys, dads, and parents, does it count if they do it with their family and there's visual evidence that an activity or a requirement was done? So if not just camping, but at the Cub Scout level program, can Scouts work with parents on requirements and have them signed off? David or Arden, would either of you like to take that?
Cub Scouting is a family program, and we've when they came out with the guidance from National, parents can sign off stuff for the Cubs. So as far as I'm concerned, parents can do that stuff at home and sign it off. Arden, you want to comment on that?
Arden gives it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Let me unmute you. There you go. Okay.
She's talked out tonight, I think.
Yes, she's been in as many meetings as I have today. Mine started at 8 a.m. I think I ate once.
I've had 7 of these. Thank you.
Good. So 2 of you have asked if the slides are going to be posted somewhere. We will make these available eventually. We're going to run through the next meeting with this, and we have to float it around to a handful of people. We also need to check with Winter and Henry in their units if they're okay with the sharing of pictures. So we'll be okay for some of that. So not a problem, but I hope that that was helpful. Also, during the patrol breakout rooms, there's a question. Do we really need 2 adults, or can you go with no adults? So the BSA has issued some safety guidelines on this. We've posted the content as well. So it is important that you have adult supervision in those breakout rooms. So it's important that you do have adequate supervision. Let's see, how can we use this format for Cub Scouts? So Tanya's asking that question. We have 2 stories up on We Own Adventure of Cub Scouts that are holding online meetings and what they're doing in the activities. So definitely check those out. It's absolutely working. So that's going to be great. Matthew, we will try to find some more Cub Scout ideas in meetings. We are just discovering, most of them only have 1 week under their belt. We were encouraging them to come out, so we're going to try really hard to get that. There are 2 questions here specifically for advancement. Can Zoom be used for a board of review? David or Arden, if you'd like to tackle that. Who wants to take it?
Yes, they can. To include Eagle, but to do a board review virtually, you have to have council approval to do that.
So the Eagle Board of Review requires asking your district for council level permission. I don't believe it's going to be withheld, but they are encouraging you to have it in person if possible, but to wait unless there's a time sensitive issue because of the Scouts' age, is my understanding. But the other boards of review, keep them moving forward, absolutely. Glennis is also asking that the Eagle requires.
We'd like.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, David.
Yeah, the Eagle Board Reviews preferred to have an actual meeting with the Scout rather than doing it virtually. If there's a good reason for doing it virtually, you send that to Alan Dieter at Verizon.net, who's the chair of the Advancement Committee, and explain why we'd prefer to do it virtually. And I know of 2 cases that have requested that, and they've both been approved.
Okay, excellent. And there's already guidelines in the Guide to Advancement about situations where remote boards of review have been used successfully. Some people have been asking about the Eagle extensions for Scouts. So there's been no other extensions for things like the National Outdoor Medal, I believe. Other things as well. So other things have been canceled. David, is there anything else you want to say about extensions related to the current situation we are in?
Well, that was all pretty well spelled out in what came out of National, where extensions are only granted for Eagle. And the council has been granted the authority to do extensions if it's only related to the fact that Scout couldn't do something for the coronavirus. And we've got that authority up through the end of September.
Okay, excellent.
Now, if a Scout is not yet a life and their life board review is delayed because of requirement not being able to meet because of the coronavirus, then once they make life, they can put in an extension request at that point.
Excellent. So the key is don't ask for an Eagle extension if you're not a Life Scout. And as a unit, support our Scouts as best we can to get them to that life rank. Jennifer is asking about cooking merit badges for cooking on the trail. And can they do and document the patrol cooking? I'm going to take this one, and the answer really is no, because they can do the cooking at home requirements. They can do cooking they've done before if they've got documentation, but they cannot do all of that. They have to do the requirements as they are written at this time. They've not changed those requirements. So if I didn't say that correctly, David, I think that's kind of a universal, that the requirements still have to be followed. Things will continue to get revisited. If we've been in lockdown for a year, I'm sure the rules are going to be different than at the 3-month mark. But for right now, the intent is that's why they've granted extensions. So they're granting a 3-month extension for those who are up against a deadline for Eagle. Focus on some other areas and things that you can work on. Family Life Merit Badge right now, Personal Management Merit Badge, all of those, great time to do it. A lot of time in getting along with your family. There's some excellent options there for things that people can do. So some merit badges are incredibly conducive to the current situation. Some are not. Can troops decide to limit leadership time to Scouts that accrued during in-person meetings versus crediting leadership time for ongoing virtual activities? This was also in the national guidance, so we'll put those links out and you'll see this, but there's a very clear description of what active involvement means, and it means registered and in good standing. For those that are trying to be in a leadership capacity, there are so many ways that they can lead, including Scoutmaster assigned personal leadership projects. It could be working on projects to help organize the troop or to help put together programs for the future. So there's so many ways to lead that the unit leader has flexibility on there. Just look at those. Who should submit the Eagle request to? Does it go to the, who should submit the Eagle extension request? The Scout or the District Advancement Committee, David?
The Scouts should submit it to the Advancement Committee at Council.
Okay, great, great. So I know that they're going to be continuing to have questions. We've run our hour. I'd like to just do a quick closing, and we're going to go to Henry and to Winter, and then Bob and Brian, if I believe Brian is still here. Henry, as you are putting this together, do you have any advice for other Scouts or for leaders that are trying to put together good programs? What is helping you stay involved in Scouting, and what sort of things do you want other units to know about meeting virtually?
So definitely use the breakout rooms, and you can use anyone if you want to. And so then, other than that, I think that our Scouts would benefit most from just it puts the merit badges even more in their hands. So if they want to do it, they need to do it themselves, and we can help them. And Zoom has just helped us connect to our Scouts better.
Excellent. Thank you. Very well said. Winter, is there anything that you would like to add that you have seen be successful and you'd like other units to know about holding great meetings?
Yes, definitely plan your meetings. Have a plan for everything, and everything just goes better with a plan. And take advantage of all this time that we have now, working on like public health merit badge and family life, sustainability. Work on merit badges, work with the Scouts, have fun during the meetings, and always be prepared.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Bob or Brian, if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free to unmute. I'm going to take two last quick questions, which is people are saying, well, what about Facebook? Can I use Facebook for virtual meetings? Keep in mind that Facebook's terms of service says you cannot have an account unless you are 13 years of age. So in Cub Scouts, if the parent is going to be present and the parent is the one who's running the computer and every parent is going to be there, it is absolutely fine. But we cannot ask our Scouts to violate terms of service or lie about their age to create an account, and they cannot be asked to use technology that it is not allowed for them to be using. So there's a difference, and you have to make sure that the tools you're choosing to use as a unit are in compliance with the age of your members. Okay, that's the big thing, and that's why you'll see that guidance that we posted from council. There are more than one solution out there, so you can check and find things, but that's the general suggestion. We're just going to wrap things up. Bob, was there anything that you wanted to add in closing?
Well, I would just say at this time when people are so hungry for connection, it's good to see Scouting as a way for them to connect in an organized way and accomplish things together and still have fun. Like I said earlier, I do think there are lessons we're going to take from this that we'll take back into our in-person meetings that will make them even better. And I've come away with some lessons from Brian and from Henry in particular about breakout rooms, and also from your earlier story about connecting to Scouts around the world that we may try and implement.
Excellent. It's always great when we can learn from each other. Arden, I know that you've had so many meetings today. Is there anything in closing that you need to pass on other than we'll put some links in the description for this video for some of these resources and official council guidelines?
Well, I have another hat as STEM chair, so I have to put in a plug for our new STEM at Home activity that we're launching Saturday, September 18th for Cub Scouts, where they can earn NOVA awards. And there's some fun games and a really neat keynote address in the middle of that. And on May 2nd, we'll be doing the older Scout version of that for Scouts BSA venturing in Sea Scouts. So it's going to be fun, and the registration goes up tomorrow at 8 for Cub Scouts, so be there. But finally, I want to thank you all for giving your time and talents to our youth to prepare them for adulthood. I think they're going to remember this time in a positive way, and Winter and Henry, you guys really rock. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Excellent. David, is there anything in closing that you need to add? I know that there's some extra questions in the chat. I'll be forwarding the chat questions to all of the council level folks. We can't get through them all tonight, but we'll be sure to work on getting those answers, and we'll start posting those as blog posts or following up with you with extra info. Go ahead, David.
A couple of questions I see there real quick. Merit badge requirements. The best way to find the latest requirements, and that we did have some changes for 2020, is to go to scouting.org/advancement. And when that page comes up, it's in 3 parts, and the bottom part is about merit badges. And if you open up the merit badge list and scroll down, you'll see every merit badge that we offer, and it'll have the current and the previous requirements there. And that stuff is the absolute up-to-date requirements.
Excellent. And remember, one point of confusion, if a scout has started a badge, they can complete it using the requirements they began with. The requirements don't change in the middle of working on it. So if a scout is mid-process, they don't have to change. They can finish under their old requirements. Did I say that correctly, David? Because sometimes there's a little stress there.
Provided they have started working with a merit badge counselor, because a scout can do things toward a merit badge before he ever has a conversation with a merit badge counselor. But once he started with a merit badge counselor, he's good to use the current requirements at that point in time until he completes the badge or ages out.
Excellent. And Brian, is there anything in closing that you would like to add? Thank you as well for joining us tonight.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, I'm lucky. I have a pretty good boss in SPL Henry, so things. I would say, just to remind for everybody, there's a lot of chat about the breakout rooms and do we really need 2 adults? And I think the thing to remember at the end of the day is we're moving things online. It's the safety and protection of our youth is the #1 thing. Just like in real life, the health and safety of our scouts is our #1 priority. That carries over even though we're online. And I realize some of these things may sound a little inconvenient to have 2 adults in every breakout room, but it's very different than if we were all in one room, because when they're in a breakout room, they're essentially in a miniature meeting all by themselves. And realize our goal here is to provide the best scouting program we can right now, not to recreate the entire offline, real life scouting program online. So there are going to be some trade-offs. It's not going to be a perfect 1-for-1. And so we're always trying to do our absolute best here. Thank you to everybody, the over 100 folks who attended tonight to learn how to bring a great scouting program to your youth during, using technology. And, I'm looking forward to continuing to work with youth leaders like Henry and Winter, and that's who we're working with. We're all in really good hands moving forward.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for everything that you're all doing and for everybody sharing such great resources tonight. We will continue to share resources on the council site. For those of you who are not familiar with it, I highly encourage you to check out weownadventure.com. This is our council's blog, and it's where we put up all sorts of great resources and stories, as well as tons of useful information for things that are just released and new. So think of it as our council's news area, and you can submit your stories as well. So we would love to hear what your units are doing. Have your scouts submit photos and stories, firsthand accounts, so that we can learn from each other. I'm so grateful to all of our panelists for sharing their information tonight. It was really great to hear from 2 different units that were doing things. Thank you also to David and Arden for making time to get us some official answers. My name's Rich Harrington, and I'm one of our council's volunteers as well. So thank you guys for making the time. I know we couldn't get to everyone's questions, but we really hope this helps. And please do your best to have scouting continue and bring the best program that you can and put that on with your units. So thank you everyone so much. I really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. We're gonna call it a day right now and have an end. So goodbye everyone and have a good night.